ahead. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And I really have to thank our host, Ms. Cadillo. Thank you very much. When I made the invitation, I should have asked her first. And then I just put it up. Hey, we'll meet at for the village event. But thank you very much for hosting us. It's a long way out here, and I know traffic is a little rough. But thank you all for joining us today. And we'll start off with a pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic from which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have anybody here for public comment, Miguel? Or we go right to the vote or another person?
Yes, so I would just like to just give a moment for introductions. We have some folks from New Mexico, so thank you for that.
Good afternoon. I made a longer commute. I came from Las Cruces, but I participated virtually. I'm very excited about the opportunity that this whole initiative that you have going on. And as the executive director for the South Central Regional Transit District, we provide services all across Doñana County. We connect to El Paso's downtown, the west side, Chaparral, all the way to the northeast side. So we have a growing system. And so we're kind of going through the process that you went through when we started up about 8 years ago. So we're kind of excited to see the growth in transportation in the county and El Paso, and we see ourselves as a benefit to that, and then hope to work with you all together as our two services grow. And so excited to have you here, and I'm glad you came to Vinton.
No, thank you. Like I said, thank you very much for having us. And ultimately, probably our dream is the same as yours, that some metro will ultimately take over the entire county. We're working on that. Think you have a good guess of it?
So I know that Ms. Ellis from Sable Housing will also provide public comment, but we'll do that at the agenda item when we talk about paratransit services. And I believe that's everyone.
Okay. We go ahead.
Okay. So then we have agenda item 4, and this is the approval. Yeah. So we have the approval of the minutes from the meeting on January the 17th, 2024. Those have been sent to the board and have been reviewed. So if you have any questions, I can answer those at this point.
I'll move to approve.
Second. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so motion will carry. And agenda item 5. This is a presentation from the transportation group that's being chaired by Javier Bañales now, and he would like to discuss what opportunities are available through WETA. So we're going to give him the floor for just a few minutes, and you're going to pull this part right up. And Ms. Bañales, Mike, come on.
Thank you. Is it big right?
Wherever you think.
My name is Javier Bañales. I'm a member of the steering committee of the Far West Texas El Paso Regional Transportation Coordinating Committee, better known as WETA, West Texas El Paso. Excellent. Now, I've been coming before the meetings as a member of the steering committee. At the last meeting in January, I was elected as the chair of the committee, so I'm not functioning in that capacity. With me also should be Celia Garcia. She's the she's the chief operating officer for Amistad. And so Amistad is a lead agency for WETA, just like Council of Governments is a lead agency for this entity. Amistad plays the same function. Amistad coordinates the meeting, they report to TXDOT, they coordinate the development of the strategic plan, the regional plan that is being completed by WETA. So I did want to mention that just to make sure that everybody realize that Celia is the staff person for Amistad. I use I'm retired from Amistad now, but I'm in the capacity as volunteer now on the as chair of the committee. And very quickly, because I realize you have a very full agenda, the genesis of WETA goes back to the 1990s signing of the American with Disabilities Act But a decade later, efforts were made to emphasize the fact that communication and collaboration needed to exist between transportation providers and social service providers. Approximately 2002, 3 or 4, the federal government has a federal transportation bill that calls for developing highly developed, coordinated public transit human service transportation plans. And so who was going to do this? Well, it was given to the responsibility of the Department of Transportations nationwide. Of course, in Texas, it was TxDOT. In 2006 is when WITA began. The 3 agencies, Council of Governments, Area Agency on Aging of the Council of Governments, the County of El Paso, and Amistad were the 3 agencies that established it initially. And of course, within the next several years, other agencies were brought into the fold. In 2017, Amistad became the lead fiscal agent. The County of El Paso had been the lead agency, but they decided that they were not continuing in that capacity. So Amistad was vetted by TxDOT. We were audited, and they approved the fact that Amistad was an agency that could be the lead and fiscal agent. 2022, TxDOT approved the regional plan that we're functioning under right now. This was the 4th regional plan that had been completed by WITA. And I wanted to share this also again because these are the 24 planning regions that of TxDOT. We are, of course, region number 8. And you see that we cover 6 counties. Of course, 96% of the population is in El Paso County. So a lot of the time and a lot of the resources are actually spent in El Paso. We do have a representative from one of the agencies in these counties. And so they're also participating in the steering committee. It's very small down there, but at the bottom you see lead agencies by the Texas state planning regions. Number 8 is listed there, and it has Amistad. We are the lead and fiscal agent. Other agencies that function in that capacity primarily are like NPOs, metropolitan planning organizations, the Council of Governments, some counties in some areas. Several counties came together to form a regional planning group in El Paso County and in the 5 other rural counties. Amistad is a fiscal agent. Can we go to the next one? Sure. The next one. Right here in the 3rd regional plan that was done, it's a strategic plan. We call it a regional plan because that's the term that's given by TxDOT, but it's really a strategic plan. And I have several additional copies here in case some of you have not received one. But in the 3rd regional plan that we did, one of the goals that we had was to have a transportation summit. This was actually the 2nd one that had been held over the life of WITA. The first one was held around 2010, 2011, working in conjunction with the Area Agency on Aging with their annual event that they have, the Civic Center. But in 2019, we held a transportation summit. It included panel discussions on the state of transportation in El Paso County. We had presenters from the different entities that provided transportation services. The person that you see right there is Eric Gleason. He is the director of the transit division of TxDOT. He flew in from Boston to be the keynote speaker. And so we had panel sessions, we had presenters. And at one time, we were gathering information to complete the regional plan that we were working on. And so this was in 2019. The plan was to have another one in 2021. But as we know, COVID hit. And so if we canceled, we didn't have it. But in the plan that we have now that has been completed, the one from 22 to 26, we have established the 2024 to have a transportation sub-conference. We're calling it the State of Transportation in El Paso County. And so on October 17th of this year, we're planning to have, again, to follow up on the concept that we've done before of having a transportation summit and invite transportation providers, social service agencies, the public, advocacy groups, the public in general, to come and hear about the state of transportation in El Paso County. So this is part of the work that we're doing now to prepare for the 2024 Transportation Summit. I wanted to come before you all and ask you all if you would consider appointing somebody be your representative to this planning group, which is starting out on March we have our first meeting March 7th, so it's coming up pretty soon. And be involved in the initial plan stages of the Transportation Summit for 2024. By doing so, again, you would be able to make a decision to certainly influence the agenda and the content and the presentations that are going to be presented. Right now, myself will be participating on it, of course, coordinated by Celia with Amistad. The Yvette Lugo for the area agency or agent is one of the participants. I believe Mr. Yes, David is also one of the participants. I might mention a little bit that the steering committee that we have right now, the new one, includes myself as a chairperson. The secretary for the group is Claudia Garcia from San Metro, City of El Paso. Two members of the steering committee are from agencies that provide services in New Mexico. One is Lourdes Torres. She's the director of New Mexico Family Services. David Amigo with South Central New Mexico Regional Transit is also on the steering committee and will be involved in the planning of the Transportation Summit in October 17th, as well as Leah Wood with Region 19. She's also a member of the steering committee and would most likely be involved also in the planning phase of this Transportation Summit. So I wanted to come before you and ask you all if you would consider appointing somebody to be on this group so that your input could be involved in developing the content and the presentations that are going to be presented. Can you go to the next slide? Sure. This is just a couple of two slides. One that shows the 2019 transportation conference. As you can see, this is one of the panel sessions that we had. You see the diverse participants. We had somebody from dialysis because, of course, they play an important role in providing services, but also in leading transportation services because of the large number of transportation of individuals that need transportation to dialysis, especially with the consideration that you're having about paratransit services. This is going to be an important component for this bill. Of course, Amistad was there, a Mary Group was there, another Amistad, she was the head of the call center that we had at Amistad, and of course 211 and the HHSC region was involved as well. Next slide. The next slide, you see City of Socorro, Victor Reta. He was in fact his term as chair of the weekends, served for 2 years, and I'm following up in that position. Next to it is the person that was in coordinating transportation services at Amistad. You see the City of El Paso participated. Yes, primarily with he didn't know this. Julio. Oh, Julio. And then San Metro, Big Band Community Action, County of El Paso, and of course Amistad. That's Rosario, who coordinated the transportation department. So this is just two pictures of the panel sessions that we had that were in the afternoon. In the morning, we started with presentations. We had somebody from the county, in fact, a county commissioner came and made a welcoming comments at the conference. Perhaps Commissioner Leon might be interested in doing that as well. So anyway, this is why I was here. On the next slide, I just wanted to share some of the members and affiliates that we've had with WETEC. Now, just like in any organization, we're about 16, 17 years old or young, and sometimes some of the agencies participate. Changes happen at the administrative level, and the new person may not be as familiar with WETEC, so they may not be as participating as much as their predecessors may have. But these are agencies, some of the agencies that have been involved at WETEC, and you see a very cross section of the community as far as transportation and social services. Next slide. And this is just some of the samples of the logos of some of the participating members of the West Texas El Paso Regional Transportation Coordinating Committee. So that was one item. The second item was, I know at one of the prior meetings there was discussion about appointing a person from the board to be the official representative to WETEC. And I think there was some discussion. I'm not sure if that was finalized. And I just want to bring that discussion back to the table. So. But that's it. If there's any other questions, I'd be more than happy to respond to anything I have.
We didn't finalize it, I don't think. I think we can go in one of two directions to the board. I think our representative used to be Sal Alonso. who is now with TechStop,
Yes.
we can have somebody from the county staff be part of it. I know that Jesus was at your last meeting. He says he's not here, probably his name will float around more today. But it's up to the board. Do you want somebody from the board to be part of RETEP, or would you have the county send a staff member and possibly bring back information to the board?
So the county, just to be very open, so it's either Jesus or I that attend on behalf of the county. So
But they can share information.
Sure.
It's up to the board. It's whatever your opinion would be. So I guess from the conversation, it'll be a staff member from the county that will be part of the retail. So I guess Jose, you'll get us that name by our next meeting.
Yes, sir.
If I may, Chair, so we do have one of the names that you would be the representative to RETEP, and then Mike had offered to be a proxy for you. But in terms of the actual steering committee for the transportation summit, how would you want to handle that?
So what you're saying, I'm the representative from the, well,
No wonder no one said anything. Yeah.
Whichever way the board wants me to handle it, I'll be glad to attend your meetings and bring back some information. So your question would be,
With regard to the transportation summit,
Yeah.
so like they're having essentially a steering committee and putting that summit together in October.
So on 7th, it's the first planning meeting that we have.
so we need more than just myself attending, somebody more from the board.
Or do you rather have somebody else attend the steering committee as opposed to the RETEP meetings? You would be going to two meetings.
Okay, the steering committee, do I have a volunteer to attend the steering committee meeting?
I'm happy to attend steering committee meetings.
Do we need action, Mr. Estrada?
No, Commissioner, you don't. Mainly because the item today isn't posted as an action item. So if, you can continue operating the way you've been operating with regards to EPATS's representation on WETEP. If you all feel that it's necessary to make an official appointment or designation, then what we can do is just informally kind of arrive at a decision either today or in the days that come, in the following days, and then, formalize that decision at the next EPATS meeting. But there's no action today.
Okay, and Mr. Benes, if you can just tell us when those meetings take place, and so we can put it in our calendar.
And then for the March 7th planning meeting, that person will be.
Yes. I'm actually traveling that day.
Since we're not taking any action, I can go. I know that we will be going for AAA, so it's 15 county staff and council governments. We can attend at least the first.
Okay, yes.
And just for your information, I would have volunteered for it, but on the 7th, I'm actually in Phoenix for some medical stuff. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you do have, how many copies of those do you have?
I have 5. I have 5 more in my car.
So,
Does anybody need one?
say one for me, because I know you had given me one, but, oh, there it is. Disregard.
Oh, there's a few more here in case anybody wants one.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we move on to agenda item 6, I do want to note, I apologize, I did not update the cover letter to show our inclusion of our new members, but I do have it in the minutes, so we will have that uniformed across the board moving forward. We do have agenda item 6. I know that Mr. Medina has some time constraints today. Were you concerned about?
Well, I think it's just one item, number 6. Because the one that I really wanted to tackle was number 7, but I think we're still.
Okay, where you go? Okay. So agenda item 6, this is discuss and take appropriate action to assign members of the board to serve on the executive committee. Do you recall in October, when this agenda item was presented to you all, the decision by the board was to wait until we had more members, so that way we can go now up to 3 members to serve on the executive committee and not have a quorum. So we're at that point. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chair, to make that decision.
Did we have, back in October, did we have any volunteers?
We did have some, but they're kind of.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No,
in various
appreciate it. We'll
places.
see you at.
So I would ask if maybe just reconsideration now, so that we, in case things have changed.
Okay, I'll open the floor for anybody that might, we need three actual members, and that would not create a quorum.
Correct, because 4 quorum.
So, I'll share it on the floor.
I know that typically following like the example at the MPO, and Michelle, this is why you should make sure you come to meetings in person. The vice chair at the MPO chairs their executive committee, right? And so I think that might be a good structure to follow. And then I'd be happy to volunteer as a second person for the county. Yeah.
So we need one more person.
I'll go ahead and volunteer.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Okay, debate. So we have to send making a motion to have,
Michelle, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry, COVID finally caught up with me, so I apologize for not being there.
our motion is thankful.
Right. Thankful that you're home.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a little bit home, yes.
So, Mr. Estrada, how would this motion be?
I think you can make a motion with all three appointees in the same motion. So a motion to appoint the vice chair, Mr. Jose Landeros, and Mr. Mike Medina to the executive committee. That's the motion made by Mr. Landeros, I believe. It's seconded and voted on.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right.
I'm sorry, Annette, I gotta let you do that.
No, I let you do that, but also you had, so you just, I'll take cues from you, whatever you would like. So agenda item 7, this is discuss and take appropriate action on the implementation of ADA paratransit services. And on this item, Ms. Smythe would like to provide a public comment, so maybe we can do that part first.
Yes, I'd like to hear from you.
Okay.
Thank you for
Would you
joining.
like to have that slide up? That was now added to me?
Well, I didn't know what slide you
Really bring that up during the discussion.
Okay, very good.
So, I'm Ellen, my name's Ellen Smythe. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of El Paso, and I oversee transit for the last 2 years. 2 years prior to that, I was the Director of Submetro, and I've been with the city for 20 years in a director capacity, running environmental services, and now I oversee streets and maintenance, environmental services, and Submetro. And so, and I always prefer to go after the conversation because I don't know what y'all are going to say. But my request is on this item. I believe that May 1st has been targeted as the implementation date for the paratransit service for the county. And that I would ask that you postpone or delete that date until the City of El Paso and the county can work together on an interlocal agreement to clarify the region, because there is a distinct line of service between the LGC and Submetro, and the customer is really at risk of being the one who might be left behind if they're just dropped off at the closest Submetro facility without us having an understanding of what that's going to look like. And so without knowing all the details that you're going to discuss, that's my request. And if I could maybe, depending on what you say, also maybe have a question at the end of it. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that or not. But
We'll open up the floor again to you so you can provide more input.
all right, that's it. Thank you.
And by the way, Ms. Mike was assigned to the county. I think that was the best assignment you had in your career to the county
2013, that
for
was
about a year.
a long time ago.
Favorite year of her career.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and move into a presentation from TTI, and Michael Walk will make the presentation. Michael, did you want to take over or would you like to do the slides?
Yeah, I can run the slides from my end. I have a copy here.
Whatever you like.
Okay, I'll start sharing my screen then. And just let me know if you can see everything okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. This is Michael Walk with Texas A&M Transportation Institute, and just happy to be a part of the discussion today on this particular very important item. I'll try to keep this to about 10 minutes or so we can have more time for discussion. So I just wanted to, my main goals of the presentation today was just to lay out a way of thinking about the different decisions and options that are available to the EPATS board when it comes to implementing ADA paratransit, and sort of the differences between interim plans and long-term plans, and getting into some of these nuances that have been sort of hinted at, but wanted to make sure that everything is on the table during the ensuing conversation afterwards. As a quick review, I think we're all familiar with the importance of running the ADA paratransit service, which is required by federal law where fixed route is in operation. And right now there's no ADA paratransit service on routes 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Route 84, which is currently operated by Sun Metro, does have ADA paratransit service, as far as I understand, which is provided by Sun Metro. And is everybody hearing me okay? I want to make sure that, okay, all right. A couple other key facts that
Just
yes.
really, can you clarify? I think Commissioner Leonard and I both heard 1/4 mile, but it's 3/4 mile off the route, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't remember even saying mile. So if I did, but yes, 3/4 mile, it's correct. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, thanks for stopping. What I hear on the audio is some discussion. So if you actually want my attention, you just have to wait, I'll watch the video also so I can see waving of hands. So this is the current situation. It's also important when we have these discussions about timing to remember that there's all the service operated in this region, both that for EPATS and for Sun Metro, is under a contract by a third party. El Paso County, of course, has a contract with TransDev, previously First Transit, which expires the end of this calendar year. And Sun Metro has a contract with MV for its ADA paratransit services, which expires the June 30th, 2025. In light of those contract expirations, of course, there are coming RFPs, right? Requests for proposals coming out, both from the county. You'll hear it called the big RFP, which is the plan, at least up to this date, was to put on an RFP for a full package of services, fixed route, ADA paratransit, and dial-a-ride and on-demand service, targeting a January 1, 2025 start date. And to our understanding, again, in Sun Metro, y'all can correct me on this, but our understanding is the ADA paratransit new RFP would be out and awarded so that the new contractor or whoever wins that RFP would start their service July 1st, 2025. So it's just kind of laying out the facts as far as we understand them so far.
So we're tracking a different expiration date for the ADA paratransit as August 2024, but we do have the ability to extend that contract without a new RFP.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. Okay. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, except to just reiterate that with the discussion on ADA paratransit, I think we all agree that we want the service to be implemented what we call it as soon as practicable, i.e. we're trying to avoid unwarranted delays. Delays might make sense, given whatever operational policies or planning we need to do. However, given it is a civil right and required by federal law, it's something that we don't want to delay unnecessarily, right? Then I think from conversations we've heard, we'd all agree that inter-area travel, right? Letting 88 passengers travel the entire region in some way is ideal, right? So whether that's from city to the county, county to the city, that once ADA is in place, we want to support that kind of travel. The service needs to be cost effective as best as we can, and that cost should be, aligning with industry standards. And of course, there needs to be funding available to cover the cost of the service. And we all want that service to be reliable for the rider, be on time, and we want it to achieve whatever our standards are when it comes to service quality. And I lay these out there only just to think through when we look at the different options. all of these factors like timing and how do we handle inter-area trips and how much does it cost and what will the service quality be are all decision points for the board. So what I'll present here is just a couple of ways of thinking of the different service periods. And we recognize that while you can use the term interim service to refer to this service that would be implemented as soon as practicable, i.e. maybe as early as July 1st. I know that Ellen, like you said, the target date was May of 2024. You'll see a new date now, board members, because of the pause we've had because of these discussions and work pausing on the contract negotiations, et cetera. So we really don't see, even if we wanted to implement interim service, it really starting until somewhere in July. It could be even later than that, depending on when it might be feasible for the operator, which is something we'll talk about later. But that's one type of service, is getting the service out there as soon as possible. We call that the interim service. And then the long-term service option, which is, really whatever that long-term agreement is, that would start later. And the reality is,
can I stop you for a quick question?
Yep.
July 1st, would that subject us to any kind of sanctions?
well, I mean, the answer is we're unsure. The county and EPATS has not been sanctioned up to this point. And of course, TxDOT is now aware of and has sent emails, about the fact that we are out of compliance with the ADA, and that, sort of all due haste should be put in place in order to keep things moving. But there's no hard date from any of the oversight agencies, TxDOT or FTA, requiring implementation by a given day at this point.
I do have an update on that. I spoke with TxDOT recently, and because we've already been communicating with TxDOT our plans for ADA implementation since the end of 2022 and all of 2023, they've known about the steps that we've been taking to get ADA implementation. It was clarified that the email was for us to understand that the ADA paratransit plan needed to be in place prior to our implementation. And they were already aware of our original go live date, which was January. So right now it was said that they're looking for us to have ADA paratransit by June, because that's like a 6-month leeway from our original January 2024 date that we gave them. So I don't know if that's a sanction, but that's what I was told verbally, that they're expecting to see it up and running, especially since we did already give them a draft of the ADA paratransit plan.
And I think that what Rena just said is important, because where Sun Metro was sitting, it was a little bit vague as far as the adoption of a plan before the implementation. So it's good to hear that clarification, and the messaging from TxDOT is to have that plan in place. So that could dictate the implementation date of what we hope might come out of this discussion and later on in the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
If I may just ask, in terms of the approval, to get that approval is coming from TxDOT, what's the timeline on that?
Well, they just got the draft, I believe, last week, and they mentioned they were going to give us comments, which they did by the end of that business day. So I guess we're back on comments and just in a review process right now. I would have to ask what's the timeline for approval, but it does seem like it's just moving efficiently, right? They didn't sit on it once we sent them the draft. They were already giving comments by the end of that same business day. So they are aware. And so I don't know, Michael, if you know what the process is after TxDOT approves. Does it go to the FTA?
I might have to turn to my colleagues on this, but I believe the next step is the public engagement phase, because it does have to go out for public comment. I don't believe it has to go to FTA first. I think once TxDOT says this looks good to us, then it's a matter of public comment.
They had minimal comments. So then, as far as I'm aware of the plan that we do have currently, we should be going out for public outreach and public hearings within March, April.
Is there a 30-day requirement or what is the requirement for us to have that engagement with the public?
Prior to implementation,
Yeah, so before the plan gets brought before this body.
can Will answer that, Michael?
I was just gonna ask Will if, I don't believe there's a minimum days. Will, maybe you can touch base on the requirements.
Susie might be a better one to answer that question.
Oops, I think you come back to it.
Well, it's because like I know.
Well, Susie's here.
I'm here, but I'm not going to go on camera. The plan has to go through the public process and incorporate all of the public's comments into the final plan. And then it goes back to TxDOT for final approval. The FTA gives TxDOT the authority to approve the plan for rural areas, and so it does not have to go to the FTA after that. TxDOT's the final stop.
But Susie, I'm sorry, Susie, to the question about a minimum number of days, it's really just a minimum number of activities, correct, which are outlined in federal law?
It's activities, yeah, there's not a date.
We anticipate that taking from March through April to complete all those activities. So we'll be looking like a 45 to 60 day window. I think our meetings count as part of that engagement process, right? So, you know.
So to clarify, has the plan been submitted for review to TxDOT yet?
Yes.
And the method of paratransit it includes right now is the transfer method, right?
Which is the minimum required by law. But that's not the conversations that we've had with the city have been trying to figure out a mechanism to avoid that.
So we still have a chance to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think what our goal is to keep the process, the administrative process and the plan moving forward, recognizing that's the minimum. But I think the conversations that we've had as the board recalls, the commissioner, Mike and I all met with the city and Sun Metro a few weeks back, and we've had a number of good conversations. And so I think we're on a trajectory. We want to bring an action back to the board to say we can avoid a lot of the issues that we previously discussed working with the city. We just need to outline what those terms are and then give ourselves a chance to develop that contractual agreement and relationship. But meanwhile, we want to keep everything going on a concurrent path so that we're not slowing down in terms of our plan. But we also are not going to put something that's above and beyond the plan and hold ourselves to that because we don't know what the process with Sun Metro is going to be, right? But I think we're all equally cautiously perhaps optimistic that we can resolve a lot of the issues that I think we need to discuss for that. But, you know, I think that's part of the discussion that we can have once Michael finishes the presentation.
Yeah, and I think you hit on sort of the key points. You know, the reason that we tried to couch this in the idea of what we do in the interim versus what we do in the long term, you know, is that one can do several different approaches to this. And the table at the bottom just kind of lays out this idea of, you know, the interim service, sort of the ASAP service, as you would, could potentially be done in what we call a two systems approach, you know, which is what's in the ADA paratransit plan right now, right? Where we have TransDev as the ADA paratransit operator and, you know, taking folks around their areas. And then if they wanted to transfer to Sun Metro, then they'd be taken to the Sun Metro area. And then in the Sun Metro area, MV, who's the contractor for Sun Metro right now, would handle that, right? So that's one way to handle interim service, this short term. I mean, another way is to try to find a way to do a one system approach. I put in here, right, MV, i.e. Sun Metro being the one system, even in the interim, if there's a way that the terms can be worked out to make that feasible or possible, right? And so that's true not only for, there's a two system option available for the interim. I believe hopefully maybe even there's a one system approach available for the interim. And the same is true for the long term, right? For a long-term arrangement. Now, for the sake of time, what I think I'll get to is sort of these tables where I just kind of lay out what from what me and my staff have seen so far in terms of knowns and unknowns when it comes to interim service options. And so I have here sort of just some key considerations, and then what a two-system approach might look like for interim, right, the ASAP service, and what a one-system approach might look like. And you notice I have a few question marks in here again, and this is no fault of the Sun Metro, except that these conversations haven't gotten necessarily into the weeds about, when and how much, et cetera. But, under a two-system approach, what we see is the realistic start date is somewhere around July 1. Under a two-system approach, not sure, is it feasible to start service sometime this calendar year? Under a one-system approach using, Sun Metro as the one system doing ADA paratransit. So I think that's an item for discussion. The idea of inter-area trips, which has gotten a lot of discussion recently, is something that also under a two-system approach, right, could be done in a seamless fashion, right? Just because you have two systems doesn't mean that every rider would have to transfer. It could be that the county operator decides to take people the entire way, right? You still have that option, or vice versa, right? That any sort of inter-area trip could be provided by one or the other contractor, and then the cost split in some way, right? So there is a way to do seamless inter-area travel under a two-system approach. It's of course much easier under a one-system approach because you have one operator and you don't have the transfers and things like that to even worry about. A couple other key things here is on the cost side. We bring up the concept of seamless. A seamless sort of non-transfer option when there's two systems. We don't really know the cost of what that would be to EPATs in particular, even though TransDev has provided a quote of about $52 an hour, right, plus a monthly fixed fee based on the transfer-based system. That might be somewhat different if they were asked, for instance, to handle seamless trips, because seamless trips are going to be longer and therefore likely more expensive, might require more vehicles and drivers. So it might drive up the cost, right? We don't really know at this point from everything I've seen what the cost would be for the agreement to do a one system approach, which is why I just have question marks there, which.
Michael.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did I miss how you came up with the 5216 cost?
That's the proposal from TransDev.
Okay. And that would include a round trip or one-way trip?
That's just per revenue hour. That's their cost per revenue hour. Yeah.
Do
There's a
they have
monthly fixed fee in there of about $40-some thousand that I just, because I didn't have a room in the table, it sits there.
So they haven't proposed a per trip cost, it's a per revenue hour?
Correct. Okay. Any other? That's a good question. And on the service quality side, of course, something else, this also will come up. It's very, very important, I think, to EPATs and to the entire region that we don't lose sight of the importance of service quality, right? On-time performance, late trips, et cetera. Now that if we do an expanded system, and particularly with seamless transfers, I think all parties would want to fully understand, okay, what we need to still deliver on-time service, and what's that going to look like, and what are those performance expectations? The reality is if we were outsourcing this, right, to TransDev, like the plan would be under a two-system approach, there would be contractual language that would define these expectations as a minimum level of performance, right? A minimum OTP, even incentives or penalties for not making those standards. And that's a typical way to deal with a third-party contractor who's delivering this service. And so, under a two-system approach, if TransDev would be doing the interim service, those would be defined. Under a one-system approach, if Sun Metro was doing the interim service, how would we define those expectations? And would there be specific language about what those expectations are, and tied to the performance requirements. So that's just something to consider. So that just kind of laying out these options for the interim service, they look very similar for the long-term service. Again, if there's a two-system approach, we're talking January 2025, one system approach, July 2025. We still don't really know the cost of this in the long run because it'll depend on the cost of the contract, the new contractor, right? We've got these big RFPs coming out, et cetera. So it's sort of uncertain at this point. And that importance of service quality remains. I'm almost done. So these are just a few key things to be thinking about. We don't actually know. So I just want to raise a few key unknowns, as we have this discussion about transfers in two systems and one systems and interim versus long-term, how will the community react to either approach? We don't really know. We haven't gone out to public comment about, a transfer-based system or a single system. So that's an important thing we don't know. We don't know really how the costs compare because right now, the two systems approach is how we've been modeling costs. And so would that be different? Is an important thing to think about. If there is a one system, approach, that would be like with Sun Metro operating the ADA paratransit in the region, either in the interim and or in the long term. What, if any, impact would there be on the allocation of Section 5307 funds to EPATs under the service expansion policy? That was just a question. There may be none, but I wasn't sure about that. We did an analysis, as the board might remember, on the service expansion policy and the potential for Section 5307 urban FTA funds to be allocated to EPATs to support service in the urbanized areas outside of Sun Metro. So is that impacted in any way? We might have to think about how the dial-a-ride service in the big RFP is affected, because there's a plan in EPAT's service plan to run general public dial-a-ride and maybe even microtransit, right, in the areas of EPATs. So if Sun Metro is doing the ADA paratransit, we'll have to think about, does that spill over into dial-a-ride or not when we're developing this big RFP? So that's an important consideration. There's a question about when Sun Metro stops operating Route 84 in August 31st. Again, this is our understanding that this is the date in which Sun Metro will cease Route 84 operations on behalf of the county. There'll have to be a decision about what we do for the ADA paratransit, which is currently being offered to the riders of Route 84.
Michael, if I can interrupt on that specific point. 84 is the one, in fact, that goes through Socorro. And I would think that those riders, if they have a question and they need to take it up with their own city council, I don't know how that would transfer over to us.
I think that might have to do with one of the next agenda items on how those routes are affected.
How we reduce service as part of the work that TTI is doing to give us a reduction in service plan and what that looks like. Right now, as long as the route is there, we need to provide the service. But if Sun Metro stops operating Route 84 in the fall, that's, I think the time the TTI is going to have their recommendations for us to put into place on that. I could be wrong, but the idea might be that when that service winds down, that might be part of the plan that the LGC takes to reduce service in the city of Socorro. So at that point, it wouldn't be an issue for us.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, we're not randomly stopping service. That's when the contract expires.
Great. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I suppose the language on that could be a little bit softer. Sorry about that. The blue text here was a new bullet. So I just highlighted it as a new bullet. It's not in your slide deck because I added it today, but because it hit me. Something else to be remembering, right, as we're making decisions about ADA paratransit timing is the financial plan assumes we're drawing down on the CMAQ grant, which now stands at about $4.1 million available, which currently expires August of 2025, although we believe it can be renewed perhaps. Right, so that can only be used for new service. In the financial plan, ADA paratransit was funded under that CMAQ grant, right, at 80% CMAQ. So that's something else we'd have to keep in mind if we don't start drawing down those funds until later, right? We don't want to put those funds at risk. And so communicating with the granting agency is going to be important when it comes to that. So in the end, the way that I'm trying to put in front of the board is sort of two key decisions, one, related to the long-term service and another related to interim service. On the long-term service plans, do we have enough information available today to make a final decision on how we want to do long-term service, or is more study needed to try to figure that out? And on the interim service side, right, this sort of ASAP service, do we want to do it, right? Do we want to do the interim service? And, if so, how? In order to meet our obligation to the people with disabilities and TxDOT and federal law, do we want to do this? If not, there'll be some ramifications of that we'll have to work through. But if we do want to do interim service, is it possible for Sun Metro to do that? How can we move that ahead? So I'll leave this slide up again. I'll stop there, see if there's any other questions, and the floor is back to y'all.
Yeah, do we actually have a choice on interim service?
Well, Mr. Chair, we did have one slide from Metro to put up, if you would consider it within the discussion, and then maybe we can follow up on Ellen's request and clarify for the purpose of really what we were asking for your reconsideration for, and then that might clarify some of the other points as far as interim and long term.
So can you, I know we had a long discussion last week.
Yeah, we did have one slide. We kept it short. Okay. So I would like to say for the record and thank the county and EPATS in engaging with Sun Metro well back into last summer to discuss this issue with us. At some point when we went from conceptual to reality set in, and we began to understand the impact that having a paratransit service with transfers, how it would impact our customers and both operations. So just to make sure everyone's clear on what possibly could happen with, or is what likely would happen with transfer type service, a paratransit customer would have to double book their rides. In other words, they have to make reservations with both access and lift for the two inbound portions, and then their two return trip portions. So it is quite complex to try to negotiate that amongst two parties through two different customer service systems. Secondly, there's a term in the industry called drop and roll, and that's not like for smoke or fire. This is like, we come and drop you off at the transit center and we roll away. And so the reason that's done is because that unit generally has to go pick up another customer somewhere else. So they don't have the luxury of staying there until the other transit provider is able to come and pick up that customer. This is not the preferred method across the country. It is utilized, but it's definitely not the preferred, and it comes with the possibility that somebody could be stranded if that second pickup is outside of the pickup window. That passenger left there, and now they're on their own to make a call to try to figure out what to do. Third item is if one of the paratransit providers has a late drop-off, which may not be a factor of the transit provider, maybe the customer themselves was late in getting picked up. This is going to have an impact in our contractors' on-time performance metrics, which is how they're graded and the cost, and there's some cost impact to the contract potentially for that. And last, from the customer service standpoint, we each will have our own policies and procedures, which are similar, but different. So they're going to have to navigate how the similarities and how the differences are going through this, which is going to cause both transit agencies and their contractors headaches, especially during the implementation phase. So as Michael did very well in his presentation, our goal really for interim and long-term is what he termed seamless. We're calling transferless. And to Ellen's point, that we need that in an interlocal. Now, Sun Metro, we're behind any method of seamless, whether it's a single provider or a dual provider. And we're confident that we could get an interlocal executed in time for whatever date you pick for this implementation date to do the seamless. And for the benefit of everyone on the call, we do understand the county is under two deadlines, one for the paratransit and the second for their large scale transit service that expires at the end of the year. So this has to be clarified enough for them to know how to go out for their RFP. So we do recognize that, and we do again appreciate your reconsideration of this. And that's our goal, is to try to come out of this with seamless and an interlocal short term, and then whatever the long term is, hopefully we'll have the time within the window you need for your RFP to solve that.
My thoughts are, I agree with you. Seamless seems to be the best direction and possibly the only direction to really serve our patrons well. So I'll open it up to the board insofar as what thoughts you all may have.
Right, so I think what I would just gonna ask a couple of questions with regard to the CMAC fund. When was that obligated?
September 2022.
So then obviously we're a bit behind, right? So I think that, and again, I think there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of unknowns in implementing this. And I too would favor, if you will, the seamless approach. My concerns, are one that, my city council has asked for me to ensure that we deliver the paratransit service. They didn't say at what cost, right? But they say implement, because they do recognize that there's something out there. How much demand that is, I really don't know. But I think the other thing, aside from CMAC, is also the potential for any title system plan. And I think that's my greatest concern. Because for me, is that once we go down that path, I think it's a lot more work to make that switching, understanding that we do have a draft plan that's being reviewed by the state. Then at some point, it'll hopefully be adopted. But there really is no protection, right? So it's upon us to know what the rules are. And so I think that in terms of the Sun Metro component, is that how much involvement or engagement has the mass transit board been made aware of this?
I'm not sure that the board's aware at all.
Yeah. If I could dovetail off that comment, I think one of the questions that I really have is, I think we're in agreement based on the conversations we had with the city, is that we want seamless, but there's two options for seamless. Effectively, there's Sun Metro extending into the LGC service area, or there is the LGC handling all in and outbound of people that live in the LGC service area, right? And
Or we each take one direction.
right. But I think that starts to get back to like one of the drawbacks is then when you're in Montana Vista, you call the LGC, and then when you're in the city, you call Paso. And I think maybe it starts to get complicated, and you start introducing more barriers for people, right? So I think what we're all collectively trying to do, the spirit of Title VI, is to remove barriers for a very vulnerable population. And so in that spirit, doing this, I think is imperative that it be one or the other. I think that we either commit to working with the city to extend lift service out into the county area, or we handle in the interim period all in and outbound through the LGC, so that we don't drop anyone off at a transfer station for Sun Metro and create an issue, because then that becomes an issue for Sun Metro.
And then, sorry, so, and in the long term, we could still work with Sun Metro operating that outside, but in the interim, it would be what Jose just mentioned.
So I think to address Mr. Medina's question about the Mass Transit Board, we've done the initial research that should the board select to have MV take over these in the interim with an interlocal, which we think we can still get done by then. We can likely administratively work with our contract, so it's not a mass transit board, which adds a lot of the extra administrative aspects to it, bureaucratic aspects to it. So the timeline, that we're seeing here, whether it's, June or July, I think is enough time for us to get an interlocal in place to do a seamless. and buy us a little bit of time to figure out how you want to go forward with your long-term RFP.
That was gonna be my other question, was whether July 1, we kept that date, whether that gives city and the LGC enough time to negotiate that agreement.
And if I may share, Ms. Garcia did raise her hand on this topic with the Amistad.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for noticing that. I just wanted to jump in and share with you all, and I know, this is great discussion, but something that we discussed last year, actually, if you all are unaware, Amistad actually also received funding from TxDOT to perform this actual service. And one of their concerns before funding us was, of course, that portion that might overlap with the county's proposal. Of course, we did meet with TxDOT and we kind of shared what our services are. And I am not sure if you all were aware, but Amistad has held 5310 funds through both the local MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, of course, which is funneled through them, and now through TxDOT to provide 5310 services, which is, targeting this population. We do go out to all of those areas. And actually our targeted start date is March 1st. So we will be beginning that service, but we have a long history of providing it. So I know you all are saying you kind of don't have anything in place right now. I don't know how you can use us, but we're technically we're restarting that service. We had stopped it because of lack of funding. Now that we have the funding again, and we will have that seamless process for that population. So it is a potential solution. I just wanted to bring it up for you all to be aware that Amistad does provide that service. And we actually, wherever the trip originates, of course, we can take them all the way. We take all of those areas, Canutillo, we added all of those further areas, west, all of the areas up to Tornillo. We are in consideration of Fort Hancock being so far out and just making sure to put some parameters in regards to no-shows, and if they do confirm the appointment and things of that sort. But we do have that experience and we will be starting that service as of March 1st. So just so you all are aware that we do have a small pot of funding for that, and we'll be glad to, jump in and collaborate or coordinate with you all, whatever you think might work, if that's any use to you all. But also to just remind you that in you all considering to do what you're doing, it will affect us in the future in regards to funding, because of course that will be a duplicated service. And so, at some point they'll probably reduce our funding or, whatever the case may be. But I would greatly love to collaborate, coordinate with you all in regards to continuing to keep our portion in there somehow, as it's something that we've historically done for many, many years. And a lot of our clients are very used to us. They've been on a wait list waiting for us to start that service again. They're excited that we're starting again. And so just wanted to put that out there. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I wasn't aware of two things. Number one, what you just said. And I asked Jose something just a while ago, and could you sort of elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I was having a conversation with Reina, and the county was part of the conversation with TxDOT. We are required to provide service within 3/4 of a mile of our service area, so that's our corridor. And Amistad goes beyond that corridor. So if there's someone beyond that corridor, it'd be them. So that was a way that we really kind of focused to not be duplicative, to ensure that they allowed their funds to be maintained. And then I know that one of the questions that we've had, the conversation we've had with the city recently, has been how to ensure that we're meeting procurement requirements. And so the county can contract directly with the city via interlocal agreements, because it's two units of government. As it starts getting into private organizations, there's more due diligence associated with that. So that might be a challenge to overcome without having some sort of competitive bidding process in place. So just something for I think us to consider moving forward. But I think I think we're definitely creating a forum where we're all here talking about provision of the same service. And I think as we can continue to identify those efficiencies and opportunities for partnership, we'll definitely do that. So that's, very well received.
I think that's a very good point that after the 3/4 mile distance that we also work with Project Amistad to make sure that every single rider has service.
Actually, I don't know if it's a part of the same discussion, but I think once we come to a decision at this end, staff will need guidance on how to approach the big one.
Right.
So we want to keep that in mind as well, as we think of short of the interim and as we think of long.
So just to go back to the dates, July for the interim 12-month period, is that something that makes sense for the city?
I have no idea. Honestly, we're at the mercy of the city attorney. So I don't know what their workload is.
July is better than May. Or
And
June.
also we have the whole negotiation of fee structure,
Right.
which involves the, comptrollers and the CFOs.
So I think to add a little bit to it, the mechanism, if the board were to agree with MV taking on these rides, makes the negotiation and the implementation of the interlocal much easier, because now we're just referencing an existing contract with existing rates and everything. So all we're doing is expanding the service area to cover the county areas.
So degree to cost, you would have to agree to that.
To our per trip cost, right? And so at that point, I think we just get down into the interlocal is the term, the cost per trip, which is defined, and the service area.
What if we don't want per trip and we want to do it out revenue hour?
Well, then we wouldn't be able to use our contract. So that would really.
What is the cost per trip that y'all have right now?
Yep.
Actually, it would be the opposite. With a current contract, it would be per hour.
Oh, wait,
For the outside, for
for the premium trips.
yes.
But I think the missing component is on top of the cost that we pay direct to MV is our internal administrative cost.
Right.
Because we have a whole administrative section of call centers and hotshot emergency teams and.
Yeah. And so it's with that I've written out 3 motions that I think I'd like to make. And it's what they plan on doing, what I've written out is authorizing staff to negotiate an interlocal with Sun Metro for that 12-month period. And then outlining the provision of costs that would be contributed by the city of El Paso, putting a dollar amount to that, and then looking at the bylaws and how we can allow that to be a buy-in dollar amount for Sun Metro to become a voting member of the LGC, right? And then 2 would be to also ask staff to work with Sun Metro on the bigger agreement to handle what Michael mentioned during his presentation as the big RFP, so that we can look at working together on the on the procurement of services long-term beyond the 1-year interim period. And the 3rd is just to direct staff to evaluate the stuff in the bylaws that would need to be changed. Right now, the bylaws state there needs to be a financial contribution, but it doesn't clarify whether that can be in kind. And I think it's going to be a little subjective about what the value of that is before we, can bring that back to the board for the board to make a decision about whether that's substantive enough to allow the LGC to join. But I think it makes sense, especially because all of this is going to start to generate more trips under the NTE, which is going to lead to more 5307 funding that, and so I know one of the mechanisms to tap into the 5307 funding is an LGC. And so I think we're ramping up to that ultimate goal of having more federal revenue coming in through Sun Metro in partnership with the LGC. And so to me, it makes sense that as we're doing that we have Sun Metro as a voting member of the board.
And when you say staff, that it goes without saying that it goes through, our attorney's going to be right in the middle of it, everything as we move forward.
For us to come back in March, so you can see Transdev's proposal compared with Sun Metro. or are we just going straight to Metro? And then that kind of brings up that we adopted the fiscal year 24 service plan. So I guess,
We might have to.
yeah, you have to like amend that, or it has to be voted on by the board that you're agreeing to kind somewhat deviate possibly, because then if we're not in the contractual agreement, like we don't agree with Sun Metro, and then it's prolonged even more, I think our next start date would be January 2025, which aligns with our original bid RFP.
Sure, if I may. So I agree with Reina and Mr. Landeros. There's lots of ancillary issues that are going to have to get addressed and looked at. But the first thing that you all need to do as a board is determine which option do you want to pursue and direct your staff to negotiate. I think the motions that you read, Mr. Lenz, I think that gets staff in the right direction. I was wondering if you'd be willing to kind of put a expedited date to get all that done against the backdrop of the TxDOT communications that we've received. This is something that needs to be fully vetted, fully negotiated, and understood. But there's still lots of outstanding questions. But clearly, well, as far as I can perceive it, deferring always to the subject matter experts on transit issues. But you need to kind of decide which one of the two options you want to pursue, have your staff negotiate the terms as soon as possible. I think if you all can negotiate the terms quickly, drafting an interlocal agreement with the city should not take very long if the material terms are agreed upon by the parties. And that hasn't happened yet. So as Ms. Ellen Smythe mentioned, you still need to decide what some of the fees that may be associated. Now, let staff do that. But once you have all the material terms agreed upon, the interlocal agreement should not take too long, especially since it'll be for a temporary period, right? Just to kind of fill in the gap. But we may have to go and look at the transit plan for the year after the main issue is resolved, which is what option are we pursuing? What are we going to agree to? That still needs to be done. When we came into the meeting today, TransDev, was still an option, and Sun Metro, I'm kind of getting the sense that the motion as Mr. Landeros read, maybe to just pursue negotiations with Sun Metro, which
Can I stop you?
Yes.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But Reina, you also mentioned if can that be like a backup just in case the negotiations fall apart?
I mean, that's what we've still been trying to like continue.
Yeah.
I think only in this one month we did stop negotiations just to see how this steered. But I think it's a good idea to continue those negotiations with TransDev because we don't know the amounts, the operational costs from Sun Metro. And again, even though we are emphasizing seamless, we can still do seamless by providing the entire trip for our county residents. And so even when speaking with TxDOT, they also emphasize that if you have everything ready to go, they're unsure why it's kind of being delayed. So I guess like those, he just said he knew that we have this ability to run with it. So it's not delayed as much as we would need to.
Okay, if I can just.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I tried raising my hand, but I'm sorry to interrupt. But I just wanted to say a couple of things if I can. I think it's important that we do our best, one, to implement the paratransit service this year because, as Mike had mentioned, our council was briefed on our contribution for the year, and this was one of the main components as to why it was increased. And so I think, one, that's critical. And two, I think the board needs to fully understand what it's committing to before we go full-fledged into an interlocal agreement. So I think it's important to have the numbers both from Sun Metro and, as if the LGC was going forward with providing the seamless service itself. So I would like to see those numbers personally before we decide on what we're going to do. I don't know how long that would take Sun Metro to get over to the county staff and TTI to get those numbers over for the LGC, but I think I would like to see that first. And any other considerations that Sun Metro is asking for from the LGC.
I think, part of this is that we're trying to minimize the risk and understanding, and thankfully we have options. But in terms of, trying to minimize the risk, and I do acknowledge that the Sun Metro, the Mass Transit Board is and will always be a very true partner in everything that we do coming into the future. But for me, minimizing the risk and having the option to go with transit, I mean, if I was on the Sun Metro side, I'd be measuring that risk on our end as well. Why would we do that, right? So if the LGC has the capacity to move forward through transit to explore this, because we're talking about 1 year of CMAX funding. What do we do afterwards? This is not a new route. This is not a new service. I mean, so the question I would have for Sun Metro moving forward is that if the board collectively decides to move forward with that, how are we going to fund that continuous service? So these are things that are going to get asked later on.
And perhaps that's the difference between a short-term and a long-term interloper. So,
no, and I understand that. But
so I believe the plan that was submitted, I believe, was the least minimum or the minimum amount of service required by law, meaning you would just bring them to the nearest Sun Metro.
Right.
But what Ray was just saying is that TransDev would be able to provide service both ways.
Yeah, we had actually came to Sun Metro with 3 transfer options. The first one being our minimal obligation to go to the transfer center. Second was that we would do the origin trip, so our county residents starting in the county to go into the city. Lyft would do city to the county. And then we also brought that we would just do the entire round trip ourselves.
Okay, never heard that.
so it'd be the reverse. So
Yeah, and basically, it didn't seem like it was going to work out with those other 2 options. So we moved forward with planning with the minimal requirement.
So Ellen, would
Say that's what, I mean, I think the minimal is just bad.
Yeah.
Right, we didn't want that. We preferred the round trip so that, it does minimize that possibility of.
But if y'all do round trip, then it doesn't.
right, I was going to ask Ellen, right? So
No, why would we pay?
you could be your service.
Because
So
with 88, to my understanding, there's no legal service area boundaries that you should be able to go into the city. I understand.
But to clarify, if we go with the MB option, then the county EPATS has to agree to the cost that the city puts out on the table based on our contract and our cost. If First Transit does, it's the reverse. So First Transit is giving the cost per service that the city now has to agree to pay for that service if they're doing the round trip. So they're mirror images, depending on which, if you go with the same provider, which determines the cost and the other party is paying that cost.
And this is why the timeline is so short, because there's all these questions.
so if we do, if that's why we need the interlocal agreement. That's why we need to sit down and hammer all that. But I'm thinking though, I guess, if seamless is the, I think what we're trying to avoid here is a transfer between 2 providers. I think that's clear, right?
But that's how the plan was submitted.
Right, but that's what we have to do by minimum law, right? And at the time, recognize that was the direction we received from Sun Metro. So I think that's, I just want to make that clear because our staff engaged the city a year ago and we were told no.
Well, we weren't in a position again.
Right, absolutely.
We lost our city manager. Our vehicles weren't delivered.
Yeah.
right, but I think that's even the case now. I mean, the Mass Transit Board, as you mentioned earlier.
Well, the position now is much healthier, but the board didn't know anything about this.
Right. And so in light of that, is it better for us to work together on a regional RFP, a big RFP for service that really allows us to structure things in a way that makes sense for both agencies? And then we can ask TransDev to just handle for the interim period for the year, all in and outbound. We'll get answers to you all about the questions about cost, because once they're in the city, once they're in Sun Metro service area, what does that look like? And like, is there any financial burden to the city at that point? Right. And we'll have to work that out, but it'll still avoid the transfer, right? Which is the ultimate risk. The ultimate risk is, right, like the conversation we had with Mr. DeKaiser was, we drop someone off and they're 30 minutes late because of a traffic incident. And now all of a sudden Sun Metro's pickup time and on-time readiness is affected by that, because we don't have anything to do with the drop-off point, but it's the other agency, and then it works in reverse too, right? So we're just going to create more obstacles and more risk for an already vulnerable population. And maybe instead of moving forward with trying to negotiate something together with the existing contract, we work on implementing service and we handle everything in and out. I know that Commissioner, we had talked about last time, if there was a cost to do this, that maybe the LGC just bears that cost so that we don't, provide a substandard level of service. And then we move forward with a larger RFP that really allows us to really hammer out the details of what a partnership can look like. And then it's through that conversation and that LGC and that interlocal discussion that we then bring Sun Metro on as part of as a voting member of the board once we start going for an RFP together with the city.
I'd be okay with that. I mean, because basically it's a pilot program.
Right.
You guys would pay for the first year. You get all this data. Now we have real numbers.
Right.
I would be okay.
And then after that, then we're gonna do a local agreement.
Well, I think
First year.
yes.
But we don't know what that interlocal agreement's gonna look at, whether it's a financial deal or whether it's we actually go for RFP together.
Right.
Or we have two services and we just,
So
I don't think we can know.
we launched without interruption or no reliance on Sun Metro to avoid transfers. We launched
Without an interlocal.
without, no, but we start working on an interlocal.
Yeah.
While we have, so we have this concurrent service going on, we start to collect data. We start to develop an interlocal agreement so we can hammer it out and figure out. I think the goal though that I would personally like to see is a joint RFP for the region. Where and then the ultimate goal being Sun Metro becomes the provider for like Lyft extends out into the LGC service area. That was what I would like to see.
And the time frame?
And that would be, so let's say that we start with TransDev July 1. We notify our service area that if they want to schedule a ride that they call the LGC, that goes for 12 months until the summer of 2025, which then gives the city and the LGC that time to develop an interlocal agreement. Maybe 6 months we develop an interlocal agreement, we do a procurement, and then maybe we get something in place. I think you said by August of 25 is when the MV contract is up, but could be extended.
Well, this August, well, we can extend.
Oh, you can extend it for 1 year.
In multiple years.
Right.
3 years.
Yeah.
So we have enough capacity on the contract.
So I think maybe by next summer, we might be in a position to, take action.
How long is the TransDev contract?
We'll make it for a year. We'll do a pilot if we start July 1, we'll do that for a year to get us to.
I would pull it to this 1 year.
Does the city's fiscal year end in August?
September 1st. Yeah.
Oh, so that's why your contract ends on.
No, I think that was just coincidental.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it would help us further way ahead of both contracts in that same.
I think what we can do is we can just make it end when the MB contract ends, so that we were both coming up against concurrent deadlines, and so that helps guide the minds that be making decisions that maybe we can work together on this.
Agreed.
So we could do like a 13-month contract or a 14-month, depending on when the first track is ready to go, and align it with your contract with Kennedy.
Jose, how would this address our ability to become a voting member if possible?
So right now, the way the bylaws are written, it's a financial contribution. I think what we can do is we're having this interlocal agreement discussion. We can figure out maybe there's an amendment to be made to allow for, that value, that in-kind service and, everything else. And I think I think we'll explore that. And so we're open. I think I'm open that we advocate. I'd advocate that we be open to that as a board, to allow Sun Metro to join as a voting member.
Okay, so that's not.
Just a few questions for clarification, like when Jose, you're talking about joint RFP, are you talking about the LGC or are you talking about Paso?
Right, I was just about to ask.
Because if it's the LGC, then we definitely, being your fiscal agent, would need to really ramp up our expertise and knowledge base to ensure that we're providing all of the
Yeah.
necessary safeguards
I
to.
think at this point, it's still the county, because the county's still the rural transit district designee. So we would rely on the county and the county's resources.
So my guidance would be, we're going to remove the ADA paratransit portion of our big RFP and do our fixed route right now, because with our purchasing department, we basically need to get them going now so that we can advertise and award who's going to do our fixed route by June or July. And then they would have the 6 months to ramp up if it's not awarded to our current transit provider.
I think you can still leave it in there as like a base bid alternate. And so
Okay.
if we don't want paratransit, so have them give us a menu.
Okay.
And so that in the event that our conversations with the city lead us to still needing a separate provider, that we still have that option to procure them and make awards. I think this is important that you work with legal and purchasing, that if you make an award decision in January, that you can still come back in June, July of that same year and, award that service if you'd like to,
Okay.
right? So maybe you award for all the services, but that doesn't mean that we're going to fund or deploy all the services.
Right, because I think even what the plan was even if it was the big RFP and it remained that way, was to even have ADA kind of implement, well, it would be the January one, but we were going to phase in GPDR anyways, which is the dial ride. We were going to phase that in, but it would be a part of it, but it would be later.
So I think they would bid and they would say, this phase, if needed and funded, would begin September of 2025.
Okay, so continue with county purchasing department on the big RFP.
And then we'll work on the interlocal agreement to evaluate how we can do a big RFP.
Any further discussion by the board? Okay, so, that was a motion gonna read.
I lost track a long time ago.
I was just saying,
Well, he made a.
no, yeah, right. Well, I never read the motion formally. It was like, yeah.
So
The staff already has direction
on the trans.
on renegotiating transit.
Right, so that, we don't need any direction.
I think the only new direction would be direct staff to negotiate an interlocal agreement with the city of El Paso Mass Transit Department for the procurement of regional ADA paratransit services preceding the interim, preceding the interim period.
But staff's negotiation on transit will include the entire service area, city and county.
Following our interim service, which is just going to be the LGC service area.
I go first.
We're going to develop an interlocal with you at the city so that we can figure out how we address this the summer of 25.
Yeah.
So there's two solutions.
During the interim,
So keep it in our RFP in case the interlocal doesn't work out, right? Then we still have the option, and we don't have to do another RFP. We already did it.
correct, but during the interim, I'm hearing you're proposing that Transdev will include all county residents inside and outside the state.
Yes, and so it would be, the LGC provider will manage all county service area residents, even if they're in the city.
So they will need that direction today.
Yes. Okay.
Well, so let me just clarify this. For purposes of what we've been referring to as the interim service, we're going to continue as originally planned.
No, the original plan was to drop off at Sun Metro.
Oh,
So that we.
that was in.
Putting the whole.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an important. Thank you, Ron. So
Can we get a copy of your draft plan?
Minus route 84.
Well,
Because we're already doing route.
right.
when does that going to drop off?
August 31st.
But if y'all start this July, we may want to stop it. We may want to talk about coinciding those 2 dates.
Right.
Because there's no sense in doing it for 1 month and then.
Yeah.
And then that ties into our reduction in service for the city of support anyway.
In the next month, 9,000 trips will drop off altogether, which reduce your service by
More than half. I think we projected 11,000.
yeah. So
Those 2 days, so it should be noted. Plans for Route 84 does have a proposed implementation with a new alignment on North Loop, which in those proposed plans has whomever the current transit provider is would take over that new Route 84 alignment. So it's still a possibility. It would be really up to the board, but we are in that position. Why are we going to realign on North Loop going through Socorro, and we're still seeing how that reduction of plan works? So just keep that in mind. It's an option, but I don't know you know, if and when, because if Sephora decides to join, then I mean, I would suggest they still go that implementation route to realign it.
Okay, so Mr. Estrada, tell me again how that motion's gonna be.
So I think what I have, and Mr. Maneros, and anyone else correct me if this doesn't encapsulate everything we've agreed to today. But motion to proceed with interim paratransit services as previously approved, but with the modification that there will be no transfers, and directing staff to explore and negotiate the long-term implementation of paratransit services with Sun Metro.
I'm sorry, Michael has a statement to make.
It was just a clarifying question, and it may not be necessary for the motion. So if it's okay, I'd just like to ask it very quickly. The no transfers for county residents, right? In the interim, are we saying no transfers for county residents, i.e. if they're in the county or in the EPAT service area, they can get seamless travel into the city and back in the round trip? Or are we saying anything about city residents who want to go to the county? I just wanted to get that clarification because you could have both situations.
No, so if they reside in the county or in the LGC service area, we'll pick them up if they're in the city, and then the city will continue to be responsible for taking anyone out to the LGC service area.
Well, let's clarify that. The city has the responsibility of 3/4 mile from our routes, which doesn't really extend any minus Route 84. So yes, there could be a different standard where you originate if TransDev is only doing trips that originate in the county.
And then I know that we were trying to avoid the transfer, but worst case is that then lift to the transfer center and we ensure that our on-time performance and pickup is there. And then we also did discuss possibility of having someone from that transit provider staff on site so that when you are dropping off, that person is still being taken care of by a transit provider employee.
And right now you're talking about somebody being picked up inside the city
Yeah.
to the county.
Right.
Yeah, we'll work with Lyft to transfer out to the county if we need to. Let's say that someone lives in Bassett, they want to go to Pavements. Sun Metro doesn't operate a route out there. So your responsibility would be to take them to the transfer station, and then the county would pick them up and take them to
You did transfers again. Yeah.
So,
I mean, you haven't accomplished it.
Right, but then that, at least that one's affecting our on-time performance, not necessarily our
I
system.
think we have a smaller operation that probably gives us more agility to pick up transfers than the other way around. Just like, being.
And those numbers, I'm sorry, are very low, I would suspect. But
Yeah, we have an estimated ridership for year one, but it should be, we keep saying it's gonna ramp up and not every trip is gonna get transferred.
Well, that's why I said, if y'all just pay for the whole thing for 1 year, we'll all have more.
Yeah, and we'll see what that looks
One or two people, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And right now, we don't have anybody. I mean, even though it's not offered right now, I just don't think the numbers are gonna be that high for the transfers coming from the city to the county. Can you identify yourself? I'm the director of Sun Metro. And Anthony Roger de Kaiser. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, Mr. Estrada.
So it's actually, similar to what I just read. But you tell me this is appropriate now. Motion to proceed with the interim paratransit service as previously approved, but with the modification that there will be no transfers to Sun Metro from inbound county trips, and directing staff to explore and negotiate the long-term paratransit service with Sun Metro.
And I would only quibble with that inbound county trips. I think what we're saying now is that you're providing a service for all county residents. And if a city resident wanted to get dropped off at our transit center, then you're going to take them the whole way, or you're going to take them from the transit center out, which should be pretty small.
Yeah, and then even I assume once they're trying to go back into the city, we would do all the way. Like we're not gonna go to the transfer center. Like
So no transfers, period.
There would be for a city resident going out to the county, they could potentially be dropped off at a county.
So change the language to with no transfers to Sun Metro.
Wait, anybody has something to say to that?
I think we're just saying there's no transfers. I think we agree that we're gonna do it seamless and
I agree.
the LGC is just bringing them in and bringing them out if they start from the county. Right now, nobody's asking from the city to go out and in. So the city's gonna hold what they do right now. That's it.
Okay, that's it. So we'll scratch that little modification. As it was before, motion to proceed with the interim paratransit services as previously approved, but with the modification that there will be no transfers, semicolon, and directing staff to explore and negotiate the long-term paratransit service with Sun Metro.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
Yeah, that's big.
Welcome to the paratransit.
Okay, agenda item 8, discuss and take appropriate action on the task order submitted by TTI for research and pilot testing for reduction and removal of transit services for non-member entities. The task order is in your booklet, and so Michael is available as well to answer any questions that you may have. But this is the agenda item that was brought forward last month as an update, not as an action item.
I didn't have a particular presentation. I'm open to questions. We tried to shorten the timeline based on board's direction from the last meeting to ensure that we would have a first draft of the service reduction policy before summer hit. And so we updated the timeline on that. There were some small changes to budget, a small increase to budget based on having the board giving direction that there was to be a public meeting and TTI assistance in at least producing materials for said public meeting. And so those are the changes we made since the last time this was looked at by the board. There's another agenda item later about a committee to help support this task order. And I'll just allude to that issue now. In order to keep this task order moving ahead, we believe it would be most efficient to utilize, either a new or, in our preference, an existing committee of EPATs in order to for them to review the near-term drafts in your first round materials, as opposed to us having to come back to the full board for approval of deliverables along the way. So we're going to be asking for a study committee later on, but I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or discussion on this.
Any discussion? So I'll entertain a motion.
Second?
Then I'll make a motion.
Okay, you'll make a motion. Okay, so we have a first from Commissioner Leon, and second by Andrea Carrillo. Price is Sans one. How much is the task force? It's for 72,000.
This will be the first task order under the master research agreement between EPETS and TTI that you previously approved. And it's the task, as Michael mentioned, that you've been talking about for the reduction of services. But the period of performance for this particular task order is it's for a year, starting on March 1st. And the total amount, and it's important for you all to know, this is the first, well, it's not the first. Actually, it is. After having signed and approved the master agreement, this is the first task order that LGC will be responsible for directly. It won't be paid, it'll be paid through LGC funds. And the payment amount for that is $72,600.
In the future, can we add the dollar amount to the agenda item? Yeah, similar to what we do for the county. Yeah, where it says like in the amount of whatever, just so we can see that.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have first and second, any discussion?
Do you have like an overall budget of how this plays into your budget so you can get an idea?
Yes, we do have, and that's under my update for the annual budget, so we can have a further discussion over it. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm gonna say it real fast, you guys can. Okay, motion carries. Oh, Michelle, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
Thank you. Okay, motion carries. So we'll then move on to agenda item 9. This is, as Michael said, in relation to agenda item 8, this is discuss and take appropriate action to have the executive committee serve as the point of contact for the task order submitted by TTI for research and pilot testing for reduction and removal of transit services for non-member entities. And so, as Michael mentioned, the preference was to use an existing committee. Since you all have already taken the action to form an executive committee, we would have members who would be available to work on this initiative.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Landeros and second from Mr. Medina. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, so the next agenda item, which is agenda item 10, this is an update on the El Paso Area Transportation Services Local Government Corporation Access Advisory Committee meeting that was held on February 15th, 2024. And I don't know if Will is still on the call. If not, I can report out. But Will, would you like to give an update?
Sure. Hello, everybody. We had invited several what we call organizational representatives, and these are representatives of human service agencies who provide services to persons with disabilities out in the county. They could also be providing within the city, but at least out in the county. We've got 5 folks who showed up. There was a miscommunication with the 2 others. But what we talked about was several things. We talked about, we went through the draft bylaws of the committee. There was a agreement from those present that they wanted to delay the adoption of the bylaws until the 7 organizational members were rounded out. They also delayed election of officers also to the next meeting, which will be March 1st, by the way. And there was a membership committee formed of 3 volunteers who would be looking at applications from individual members, and these would be riders who would likely be riding the system. So we went through the bylaws. They were all pretty well. There was, with a couple exceptions, they thought they were okay. We went through what the major components of the draft ADA plan were, and they're expecting to see them this week to start reviewing that. And otherwise, it went really well. They were very engaged, and they'll provide the good kernel for the advisory committee plan. Annette, did I get the big items?
I think so. We'll be hosting the next meeting on the 1st of the Council of Governments. And so I think that they've really been able to give a lot of direction so far. So as we move along, hopefully we're ensuring all of the considerations and initiatives that they're asking the LGC to take into account.
And what we'll do as far as the ADA paratransit plan itself, which also includes all the outreach activities. Oh, that's something I forgot. They provided some locations for community outreach efforts in the 3 areas that we're talking about. So that, and kind of the timing of all the community outreach efforts and the adoption of the ADA plan. And we will use what you all decided today to revise the ADA paratransit plan accordingly.
And some of those locations mentioned included potentially Emergency Services District number 2 off Montana. We would have to ask them for availability, considering Village of Benton chambers, and then also looking at the El Paso Community College question ballot.
I think those are good venues that historically been really available. Including
Thank you all. Is there anything else?
I think I got everything.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item.
We're without a chair right now, and our vice chair is remote, and Telma requires the chair to be present, so we have to temporarily vote to have a chair, or we can take a recess until Commissioner Lang comes back. What do you guys want to do? Any health break? I think we can recess. Yeah, it's a health break. Don't stay with me. Anything time sensitive on the update?
No, that's what you guys took to.
So you don't need, yeah, I think what you just said, building,
right?
Okay, I apologize for breaking up the meeting, but we're back on the.
All right. Okay, these will, I think, go through fairly quickly. So we're on agenda item 11, and this is discuss and take appropriate action to approve the Access Advisory Committee bylaws, but I would ask for you all to take no action. They did not approve the bylaws, and we will revisit those on the March 1st.
No action.
Okay. All right. And item 12, I would be asking for no action as well, since we have already taken care of this item in the previous agenda item set. Okay, all right, we're rolling. Hopefully I don't mess things up with this agenda item, but at the last meeting, Commissioner Leon asked for us to provide an update on the annual budget, but I think there is still some uncertainty with regard to ADA paratransit. But I just wanted to just go over a few of these items, and Michael, he definitely helped me understand better. You all may already have a good handle on this, but I'll just quickly just provide just a brief overview of where we are right now. So with EPATS, LGC, there's 3 services that you're supporting the cost for with El Paso County, which includes the county bus costs, ADA, paratransit, and administration costs. In terms of the contribution rates, those all vary depending on what services are being provided. So this is what we're running up against in terms of finding the best path to ensure that we're providing the cost share for the matching funds overall. And so when you look at county bus, ADA, paratransit, and administration costs, all of these have different percentages based on the services plan that was developed by TTI. And so El Paso County has 82 point, well, you can read those. So then you look at the third column, and that's who is paying for those services as of now. So El Paso County is paying for the county bus. Right now, we're still waiting to see what's going to happen with ADA. We have further instructions now. And then under administration costs, LGC has been paying for those costs, with the exception of the El Paso County transit staff, which is included in that cost. Also, when we talk about the funding sources, where those are coming from and what those match requirements are, here is another example in terms of the funding that's being used to administer this initiative is the CMAQ, the 5311 admin costs, and then 5311 operating costs. So depending on what's going to be paid for what service, that's the rate that you need to be using when you're providing your non-federal match. And so as of right now, I'm sorry, I made it too big. Let me see if we can, well, I'll tell you what the amount is. We've got, I'll do it this way. So just so you all are aware, in FY23, we were, the council of governments collected $213,622 on behalf of the LGC. The total expenses were $48,583. So there are funds unallocated in the amount of $165,039. When we look at 24, the anticipated revenues that we're looking at receiving on your behalf is $346,400. So we know that that amount has already been inserted into the service plan, but the $165,000 has not been allocated as of now. And so in terms of next steps, I still don't have a budget for you, Commissioner Leon, is what I'm trying to say. But I did make contact with the auditor's main person who's serving as the point of contact for El Paso County Transit staff, and that's Bianca Valenzuela. And so I've asked for her to see if we can set up a meeting with her and the grants manager, Ramona Dominguez, so we can have this discussion in terms of how we look at paying, what's the easiest path. Michael has already been providing us with examples on how that can be, but we need to have a discussion with the county auditors to decide how that would work. So I just wanted to let you all know where we are with the annual budget. Are there any questions for me?
When you meet with the auditor's office, can you include me?
Yes.
Or can you make myself available?
Okay. And I didn't give you a chance to see the program, but is there anything else?
No, this is good. And I know that we said we would meet first with county auditors before we bring anything to both MPO and tech staff, because CMAQ is also one of the funds we need to drop in.
Yes. So, okay. So that's all I have for this item. It's not an action item. if there aren't any other questions, we can move on to agenda item 14. So on agenda item 14, I'll make sure I don't do this again. I'm asking for approval, discussion to take appropriate action on the fiscal agent's financial report, which includes payments that would be made to Kim Smith. And that's for the month of December and January. And then we also have Verifia public relations in the amount of $1,872.81. So the total reimbursement that we would provide is $9,393.81 if approved by the LGC. So I would just get a motion for that if I can.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. So I have the first from Commissioner Leon and a second from Mr. Medina. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion will carry. This one, agenda item 15, this is not an action item, but USDA has a program available right now. The due date is April, and it does allow for rural transit districts to apply. And so I just wanted to bring this to your attention. I believe that what you would be able to do is you would only, if you were to apply for this funding source, it would only be for Baden and O'Neill, because that's the only service area that's allowed under USDA, because all the other communities are El Paso is too big and the other communities are contiguous to City of El Paso. So in speaking with Michael about this, he did mention that maybe there could be a request for maybe perhaps just further research into Bavens and O'Neill with transit. But I just wanted to let you know this funding source is available for our rural area, but specifically those counties. And I know we can't take any direction, but I can bring this back in March to see if there's consideration to apply. But the due date is in April.
And what is the amount?
You can apply for, let's see, where did that one go? I think that there's only, it's going to be really competitive. It's at the state level, and it's 750,000 they only have available for this one initiative. So I'll have to go back and get you the minimum that we can apply for. But and if this is not the time to do that, I totally understand. But
It's always the time.
so if there's any questions I can answer that, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, then we have the updates from county staff.
So essentially, you've heard most of the updates earlier, because one of the main ones would be the ADA paratransit implementation. I think also what we discussed in January was the EV pilot program. And so we did get back from Sun Metro a new license agreement, which is in legal review. It's on Monday's commissioner's court, but still pending final legal review and approval. So hoping to have that within next week or the next 2 weeks. And then it would go back to Sun Metro to go on their council. Once it's executed fully, then we can continue with the EV pilot program in TechStop. And then I guess you have fair capacity.
Hi everyone. Right now, the passenger shelters, we executed an interlocal agreement amendment with the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. That is pretty much just to make revisions to the completed plans for Socorro's decision. We got to remove some of the passenger shelters that were going to be installed within their jurisdiction because it was not fair for the other agencies. So we got to go back to the plans, make those revisions. We executed the interlocal agreement, as I mentioned last week. It was approved by Commissioner's Court. Right now, it's just coordinated on those contracts and hopefully got the kickoff meeting for this small project. Hopefully next 2 weeks, next week. We're anticipating the duration, it will be 1 month to 2 months. So it's really fast. It's just revision to the plans. The exercise, I will take the time of everyone. It will be just how we are going to reassign those passenger shelters that were going to be with City of Socorro. Initially, it was going to be 16, combination category 1, 2, and 3. But now it's going to be properly distributed between all those other agencies. That being said, we want to maintain consistency, and everything will be pretty much following the feasibility study that was performed by TTI in a ranking system. So we are going to be consistent, not to prioritize any agency, but pretty much the uses of those locations. So we are going to provide an update to you, hopefully on the next board meeting, how the status of the project is going.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, so before we get to our personnel item to discuss on executive session, so our last agenda item is to adjourn. But before we do that, just a reminder, our meeting will be March 20th and it'll be at 1:30 p.m. And would that be at the courthouse?
I'll open it up to the members as over the next couple of weeks, maybe they can give my office a call and if you would like to host us someplace where you'd be glad to consider that. If not, then at the courthouse.
Okay, so place to be determined.
Okay.
Okay, then.
Through the chair, before we adjourn, I'm sorry. I just had one quick question for Sun Metro. When do you anticipate that the Mass Transit Board will be briefed on what we're discussing for the future long-term plan?
Do you want to be presented?
Yeah, you guys could kind of present. I mean, we meet once a month. Our next meeting is March 13th.
I think, Ellen, you had asked for something that we could take to read. So I think some clarity coming out of the staff direction today in writing, that way we have something to brief on. So
the posting either has to be a management update, like we are here to update you on this is what we decided. Or it is, we are here to ask for your approval for something. So if y'all have, as a group, put together a formal, very short PowerPoint on this is what the LGC is doing, and as a management update, that would be good.
And what we discussed today.
Yes.
Send in the future.
So, sir, we'll get with you all, but.
Okay. But the posting deadline for the 12th is like, we have to post 2 weeks in advance. That's the new normal. So too
much time.
Thank
So,
you.
so realistically, we're looking at the April Mass Transit Board meeting. It's the second Tuesday of the month, more or less. So that would probably be the most realistic briefing date.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, possibly 2 or 3 slides.
April 9th. But then, like I said, we have post by March 26th. And we can
Okay, so then if there is nothing further, we just ask for a motion to adjourn. Second. Second. Okay, Commissioner. We have a first and second, all right? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And again,
Thank you, Michael.
thank you for the
You're well.
Thank you.
Yeah.